Welcome to the Strain Podcast, a Southgate Media Group production, where we talk all about Guillermo del Toro's new piercing horror fantasy series, The Strain, that airs on FX at 10/9 Central. I'm your host, Blair Knight Graves from ShowRatings.tv, and with me today is Kyle Tremblay, who's also from ShowRatings.tv. You can find us on Twitter at BlairLovesTV and at KyleLovesTV. Remember, Blair is spelled with an E. And also make sure that you follow the podcast's Twitter handle at TheStrainPod. How are you doing today, Kyle?
Blair, I'm ready to pierce to the heart of this episode, just as Nora and F, and to a lesser extent Jim Kent, pierced to the heart of the vampire.
Or Jim Kent held an iPhone while they pierced.
And then expressed his great disgust. Alright, guys, this is disgusting. Great. Good summary, Jim.
That's like an actual quote of what he said.
You're a real professional. Employee for the Center for Disease Control. I didn't realize disgusting was the point at which you just say, nope, guys, sorry, no dice.
Oh, man. Well, this is one of the many moments we're going to be discussing with about Season 1, Episode 4 of The Strain, called It's Not For Everyone. This episode was written by Regina Corrado, who is known for her work on HBO's Deadwood and FX's Son of Anarchy. Sons of Anarchy, that's a plural.
It's just one son, I think.
It's a single
he was
son
an
of
only
Anarchy.
child of Anarchy.
It's a very different show from the one you think you're watching.
Very much so. I think its other name is Tyrant, but we'll leave it at that.
All right, moving on. So let's jump right in. We were just talking about the opening sequence in which, in this week's episode, in which F, Nora, and Jim take apart the captain, whose last name I cannot remember, after they have killed him when he attacked them with his stinger thing.
His stinger? You're really going with that? Another Jim Kent classic. He was on fire until he admitted that he was working for the bad guys. He got cruelly left behind by his buddies. Although he did manage to get indignant while he was admitting that, which was a real power move.
Yeah, that's a rare. That's actually not that rare. That's actually, I would say, like something that probably happens all the time.
That struck me as real. That struck me as something that people would do. Like, hey guys, I backstabbed you, but I can't believe you for not forgiving me.
Right.
then turning it into you being mad at them. Yeah. That seems like a real life move.
Right. Well. So the episode opened with this autopsy where it was kind of gross, right? I mean, they really showed us what happens to the human body when this vampire virus takes over.
And it was awesome. I mean, this is the reason for the season, right? Like, this is what we're here for. We're here because this wouldn't be in any Twilight movie, you know? We want to see that the vampires are straight up monsters. They're not, and the show went out of its way to call them monsters. Early on, at some point during that scene, like someone said, like, I was just attacked by a monster. And I feel like that's a very deliberate use of language, and this scene was sort of the show's planting its flag that, hey, we're gonna get into it. Like, this isn't gonna be, a goopy romance vampire drama. Like, this is gonna be goopy autopsy vampire gross out. Like, this is, and I enjoyed it. I mean, it was creepy and icky and all the stuff that you want from a horror movie about monsters.
Yeah, and this is what I praised the series. Well, what I praised the book series for in our first episode of the podcast, where we talked. Prior to having seen any episodes, we just talked about what we were expecting, and this is also something I said in episode 1 of our podcast. But one of the things that I absolutely adored about the book series, which, in case you're a new listener, the biggest difference between Kyle and I is that I have read the books and he has not.
The biggest difference in our entire lives.
Yes. Otherwise, we are 100% the same.
Completely.
So we're like 99% the same, except for this book.
More like 70% the same. This book is a pretty big difference.
That's true. That's true. That's taken up a really big chunk of my life.
Yes.
But sorry, derailed. The is in the books. One of the things I loved about it was these are not the vampires that we have come to enjoy as
Yeah.
a society in the 21st century. These are not your everyday sexy British guys with their chiseled jaws. This is pretty heavy, horrific stuff where they are a parasite and they are going to eat you in the most gruesome, disgusting
Yes.
way
It's
possible.
it's it's much closer to a I'm thinking like 28 Days Later kind of
Mm-hmm.
zombie story. I mean, they're
Mm-hmm.
closer to what we understand as zombies in terms of their function on the show, which is as being terrifying monsters that attack you. Whereas our popular culture understanding of vampires is at a point where that's not what they are. You know,
Right.
vampires are something very different. I know that all the science people will be like, "Oh, technically they're vampires," and I know that. But I'm just saying, like, functionally, the role that they serve in this show is similar to zombies in The Walking Dead or 28 Days Later or something, as opposed to the vampires as they've been portrayed in every other instance in modern pop culture.
Right, which is one of the things that I love about this story is that prior to Bram Stoker's Dracula, which was written in the late 1800s, um, vampires were scary big deal creatures that you like legitimately would put crazy things throughout your house to keep them at bay. People were very scared of these creatures across the planet. Like this is a myth that has just been just universal around the planet. People are scared of the dead coming back to life and eating your face off.
Yes.
And um, and I like that kind of vampire. I like it as a monster. And the strain, I think, in this episode successfully showed us that indeed they are
Yes.
monsters.
Right.
Because, like, even with the Bolivar stuff last week, obviously, like, he's kind of being creepy and monsterish, but he's also, like, the orgy scene was gross, but you can still imagine an audience that thinks, oh, well,
Of course.
this will get sexy anyway. But
Yes.
no, like, it's not. It's
Right.
not
This
sexy.
isn't
If any,
sexy gross.
no,
This,
this is
yeah.
not sexy girl.
Right. A genre that True Blood really nails home at times. But yeah, this is not the Strain does not intend to be a show that is sexy. And that's I think the big difference. The way that it's distinguishing itself from other vampire material.
Well, and I think even with the rest of the cast, that's fair to say too. I mean, yes, actors are attractive for the most part that they have hired, but I don't think that they went out of their way to make a hunk
Hold
of
on.
a
Hold on,
protagonist.
hold on, hold on. Hold on. This is the wrong episode to be making this point when we brought in the smoking hot supermodel blonde to be the world's greatest hacker. This is
Dutch Velders.
Yeah, this is the wrong episode to be making that point because holy cow, was that a concession to to pop culture? Like,
I have two notes
okay,
that were actually exactly about that. In a world filled with mostly normal looking
yeah,
people, we have Dutch Velders come in who cannot, whoever that actress is, cannot deliver a line for the life of her.
she
Uh,
did not make it out alive.
no,
From
I
acting
couldn't.
perspective.
Yeah, no, not at all. And also just a completely useless character in every way, shape, and form,
Yeah.
except like to propel the story in a very interesting way.
Oh,
And then to
interesting is
have
one word for it.
yeah, and then to have Anne Marie take her shirt off for
Oh,
no
I
reason.
was wondering that. I was genuinely like, were they trying to establish that the room was hot?
I think
Was that?
that the vampires like remember that they said that the captain had a fever. I think that the parasites thrive in heat. So I think that yes, that's what it was meant to establish, but she wasn't sweaty at all. She wiped her face,
Right.
but like no care from the
Well,
makeup department
she
came in to make her have a wet
she
face.
took off her shirt and then she immediately put on another shirt. So
Yeah.
it was really just, I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I actually, it's so funny. I actually have those notes.
right.
But okay, but outside of those
Yes.
two
The
instances within
story,
this
yes,
episode,
the story is I know what you're saying. The story is making small concessions on the margins to appealing to television viewers, which I think is in line with whether what the show's intention is or not, with what the show actually is, I feel like those kind of concessions are in line with what it is. But yes, the main characters and stuff are all intentionally, I think, like Nora isn't wearing crop tops, you know?
Right. She's dressed like a professional.
Right. Yes, she dresses like a professional.
Which never happens on television
Very
with
rarely.
women who are professional.
Yes.
I think she's even wearing flat shoes,
Right.
which, holy cow,
Yeah. Never
that's
see
a
it.
really big deal.
Yes.
A law enforcement agent who is in a supernatural drama
Yeah. That's true.
wearing flat shoes, who's a female. Even Scully, who wore, was always covered up in the X-Files,
Right.
was always in heels. So it's a big achievement. Thank you, FX. Okay, well, so we kind of already got into Ansel and Anne Marie, so we might as well cover that a little bit now that we've covered the very gross autopsy, which was excellent,
Yes.
right? Mind you, like one of the grossest things I've ever seen on television.
Yes, I agree. We gotta get to Ansel and Anne Marie because I have a question that I need to ask that I don't know how to ask in an inoffensive way.
Okay.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, do it.
Does Anne Marie have brain damage? I'm only half joking. Because at one point in this episode, she delivered a full-fledged monologue to a dead dog. Okay? And it was a monologue about planes being missiles. Can someone please explain to me what the hell that scene was? Because
I think
that was ludicrous. And, wait!
Okay, go.
3 minutes later, she straight up murders someone. Okay? So we just met this woman. Like, she is doing a very elaborate prayer ritual. She is talking to her dead dog, and she is committing a homicide in a 10-minute span.
Yes.
That's the basis for my question.
Yes. I think that this is a part of of portraying human behavior problem that you and I have talked about with this show. I think because if I recall I think I tweeted this a couple times, but the Ansel story, even though I keep forgetting his character name, is my favorite plot from the first book. It's a perspective of him in if I recall
Don't
correctly.
spoil it.
No, it's the perspective of him deteriorating and then locking himself in the shed.
Yes, fair.
And that's a really cool story to read from the perspective of somebody falling
Would
apart.
have loved to have seen that.
Right. Did not get
Did
that.
not
we
get
got Anne
We got
Marie.
Anne Marie's perspective, which was 1,000% crazier.
Which was, I think, an attempt at being deep and metaphorical.
Yes, 100%. I agree. The monologue about planes
clearly.
or missiles cutting through the sky was full-on junior high school writing. Like,
Yes.
full stop, junior high school, a 7th grader wrote that.
Yes.
Whoever wrote that monologue is a 7th grader. I'm sure of very few things in life that is something that I am sure of. that I can't even imagine how that made it past one draft. Like, for that to make it on screen, for an actor to have spoken those words while looking solemnly at the grave of a dog is like Under the Dome wouldn't do that.
Yeah. I think the show has failed here.
Yeah.
At progressing that storyline at a natural pace. And I think part of that is that they have 13 episodes to make the apocalypse happen.
Yeah.
And within that span, Ansel and his family need to have their story very early on.
Yeah. Okay.
But they decided not to spend any time with them whatsoever in episodes 1 or 2.
Right.
So they had to bull rush through all of it in episode 4.
Yeah, I do like that.
Genuine.
Yes. Sorry.
No.
I do like that the show does seem comfortable with cutting storylines from episodes. It's not doing the thing that I complain about constantly with Arrow on the CW, where it tries to address every storyline in every episode. It is very good at having an A story, a B story, and a C story, and giving them time to play out. But I see what you're saying here, where it just rushed through this story and sort of missed all the important beats that would have made it hit home at all.
Yeah, I think that we followed the wrong character in this story.
Mm.
Um, and I just think that the show didn't want to play its cards too soon. But I wish that we had followed Ansel through his deterioration and his decision to lock himself up.
Yes, that's okay.
Uh,
I have a question for you about that.
yeah.
Is because this whole time, all we really know about him is that he's refusing to see a doctor and has refused to see a doctor since the moment he was released from the plane when he was not exhibiting any symptoms, right? He was
Yeah.
released from quarantine because he had no symptoms. He got home. He immediately got home. He wasn't like the pilot. We wasn't worried about anything. And since then, all we've seen of him is him refusing to see a doctor. He refused
Mhm.
once again in this episode. Sent his wife and kids away, as if he was aware at that point that he was a danger to them. And then
Mhm.
when she returns, he has locked himself up clearly for her safekeeping. So, so why did he refuse to see a doctor?
Well,
Like when did that turn? Like he's was he in was he was in denial at some point, obviously, but at some point he stopped being in denial and started taking very practical steps to protect his family. When did that happen?
yes. So there's two things that I think are missing here.
Okay.
In my, I'm thinking, first of all, I don't remember there being like a big welcome home. I'm so glad that you're safe scene, and I think that that would have made all of everything that just happened more effective. Am I wrong? Was there a big like he comes home and his family's so happy to see
There might
him?
have been a tiny scene, but not
But like,
anything.
but like, if we're supposed to care about this, okay, there's that.
Yes.
And then in terms of the doctor, my guess, and again, saying this with all of the information that I'm saying this with information that I've gleaned from the show, is that the vamp as they're going through their transformation, they are somewhat hearing this voice in their head, and they're somewhat getting these really bad pangs, these loud
Yeah.
sounds that kind of stop them from doing things that they would otherwise do, like putting Advil or alcohol in their body because that might poison the parasites. I think that the aversion to doctors is actually a symptom.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think that it is, but again, that doesn't necessarily make any sense with the captain's
Exactly.
behavior.
That's what I was gonna bring up. That did the
Uh,
captain fight it? Like I don't understand.
right. Because he transformed at the exact same time that all of them did. It's like his gestation period wasn't any different.
Yes. And I'm
Um,
not saying that the seeing a doctor would have made any difference in the long run, obviously. But
right.
I struggle to figure out how Ansel would have known that. It seems like
Right.
as soon as he started, I don't know, bleeding from the gums or losing his hair, he would have seen what was established to be a family physician in this episode. Like he has a
Right.
trusted family physician who's clearly not going to, out him to the media or something.
Right.
So what I just don't I'm just in the dark as to the whole mechanics. And if it was just purely denial, then okay, that seems to be the go-to for the show. But then we find out that he protected his wife by locking himself in the shed. So he's not in denial. That's acceptance.
Yeah.
He clearly was aware that he was about to become a danger to her.
I think it's clunky story writing.
Yeah,
I
fair.
think it's. I
I
think
think that's
it's
the
just
answer.
contrived and easy.
Yeah, and just not enough time. I mean, it would have been, again. It was something I said last week, which is these are easy fixes. If you would have had the scene that you talked about, where we established that he loves his wife and maybe missed her a lot, and those two are really close, like that would have helped this land a little more emotionally. And then just like a scene where that it sort of explains this whole dynamic of why he won't see the doctor, or maybe just make it so the doctor was out of town and he doesn't trust any other doctor. Like come up with a contrivance that at least makes consistent sense. As
Yeah.
opposed, this is inconsistent. Like I don't know what his mindset is or why he did what he did. What he did was kind of cool. Like I liked the outworkings of it. It's just I don't understand the motivations.
Yeah. I agree. But I also I agree 100%. And I think though, as I said before, I think that we are getting we're getting the wrong perspective character for this story.
Yeah.
Um, and it's easier just to make her sympathetic and sad and have to try to fight him on things than to actually make their lives make any sense.
We have gone too long talking about this without bringing up the 5 minutes of power that was neighbor Trip Taylor, who came over and
Taylor the dog whipper.
yeah. I mean, it's like Guillermo del Toro was like sitting on his throne or whatever, whatever I imagine Guillermo del Toro, like in a lair, and he's like, "All right, this dude's got to die, and he's got to be murdered by a point of view character. So
Yeah.
we've got to make it so this guy is the worst. Problem: we have 2.5 minutes of episode that we can devote to him. What can we do in 2.5 minutes to introduce this guy and make him so loathsome that the audience cheers when he is murdered in cold blood by a vampire?" Answer: dog whipping. Like, someone, like, one of Guillermo del Toro's lackeys was like, "Sir, dog whipping," and Guillermo was like, "Bingo." And that's what it happened.
Dog whipping is terrible, and
Yeah.
like I'm not in any way, shape, or form like supporting dog
No.
whipping,
But
but that's not to me a homicide worthy offense.
I would say, you know what? I'm gonna go out on a limb and agree with you.
Like,
I'm gonna say
yeah.
the suggestion that he hit your dog is not an equivalent response to that. Is not pushing him into a shed with a vampire who brutally murders him.
Yeah,
It's not,
I agree.
that's a problem.
I know, and the worst part is right now I'm thinking of all the things that he could have said that I would have pushed him into
Yeah,
the shed for.
right. But he was only introduced 2 minutes ago, so he has to be believable as a neighbor. So
I know,
yeah.
but it's her dog who is already dead. If he'd said something about her kids,
When he
that
yeah, he didn't kill the dog, right? Like the dog was killed by Ansel, right? And,
no, he wouldn't have gone into the shed if he believed the dog was alive.
right.
Remember?
Yes. Right. Okay.
Because he was going in to whip the dog.
True. Yeah. Good point. Good point. No. So he allegedly, a claim which he denies, he allegedly hit the dog once, which makes him a bad person who should probably be punished in some sort of severe way, not with murder,
No,
not cold-blooded murder.
that's a really quick turn for Anne Marie to take.
Yeah. Right? She was just praying on her way there. Like she was so like first of all, Anne Marie, that entire scene was as I tweeted it, behaving like a character, like a teenager in a Halloween movie. She buries the dog and then like she hears growling from the shed and she's like, "Honey, like I'm going to open the locked door and stick my head in now." I mean, she did everything in her power to get brutally murdered.
Well, she didn't die.
No, but she sure tried.
Yeah, she did really try.
And was only prevented by her vampire husband's apparently forward thinking to chain himself up so that he just couldn't quite reach her, but definitely could still reach Trip when he was pushed inside.
Yeah, that was a fascinating storyline, and it's sad because it was probably my least favorite plot of this episode.
Yeah.
Given that that's my favorite plot from the first book.
Well, as I wrote in my review, which you can read on showearnings.tv, that entire sequence of events was utterly and completely ludicrous, and I kind of loved it because it was just like it was fun, it was dumb, it was. I mean, I've come to accept the strain is what it is, and so sure, let's have some vampire eating the terrible neighbor. Like at least it's fun. So
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
And it's not child custody hearings.
None of it was child custody hearings this week. Child custody. The court was closed. Maybe this episode took place on a Saturday. Because the court was closed today. And as I wrote in my aforementioned review, this was my favorite episode almost entirely because it was about interesting things that were not involving Ephraim's family. There was no child custody. There was no Sears manager mucking things up. There was no precocious son. Like, just the absence of that terrible, awful material made this episode my favorite to date.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to hear that was your favorite episode to date because every new episode continues to be my favorite episode to
Good.
date. But so my question is, you didn't care for that, but Gus's plot, this entire story or this entire episode was all about his family and all about mundane, normal, everyday life things.
Certainly, well, if stealing cars is your everyday life, but sure.
Well,
sure.
for his,
yes,
certainly for him that is, like in his world.
I assume so. Returning stolen clocks, stealing cars, your usual.
Yeah.
Dealing with Marlo Stanfield from The Wire. What up, Marlo? Making a cameo as the guy he sold the car to.
Okay.
Very excited to see him. I just started shouting Wire quotes during the episode.
Of course you did.
Yes, of course, naturally, as is my sacred duty. Yeah, but and you bring up a great point, because that was the only story in this episode that wasn't directly related to the vampire apocalypse. And as we have thoroughly established in this podcast, this show struggles when it's not directly related to the vampire apocalypse. But
did you feel it struggled with Gus?
I think you have to put struggle on a scale, because the struggle, the way it struggled with Gus is far, far less than the way that it struggles with the child custody stuff. Primarily because it's clearly trying to draw Gus as a likable character. There's no woman that's being sort of kind of accidentally made the bad guy in the Gus story, the way that Ephraim's wife is being made the bad guy in that story just by virtue of being opposed to the protagonist.
And being a former romantic interest.
Yes. The manager from Sears, she's sort of the bad guy by default. There's no annoying son. I mean, there is an annoying brother, but he only had like 2 lines. Did he have a cold in this episode? What was up with the brother?
I don't know. I think he's addicted to heroin.
Oh, right. Okay, good.
So yeah, he was like, hey, I need that clock back so that I can get some heroin, and he's like, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, to answer your question, I don't think the material was particularly good. I don't think it told us a single thing about Gus that we didn't already know. Like, nothing was revelatory. It just established the same things that every Gus story has established thus far. But having said that, the show does need non-vampire material to pace itself. Because if it was just wall-to-wall vampire action, it would be exhausting, and it would sort of lessen the impact. So you've got to, you know, whether it's Vasily or Gus or the horrible custody material, you've got to at some point pace the episode, and fill the hour with something that's not just straight up action sequences, or else it'll be boring. So yeah.
So it's certainly not revelatory in any way, shape, or form, but I loved the Gus material.
Okay.
And this is where I think F's story has failed. And I think that this is something that the strain is trying to push, and it was just subtle enough in this sequence of events with Gus that it was very subtle. But this is his human love. This is his family.
Yes.
And these are his stakes that we are following sort of mundanely, even though he's stealing a car.
Yeah.
It's not a big chase to get the car.
Yes, nothing went wrong with the car.
Nothing went wrong.
Right.
This is his everyday life, and this is what he does to survive, to help his brother get off drugs, and to help his mother pay the rent.
Yes.
This is what he is willing to do to make those things happen.
I think it was... yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, and I loved it. I didn't think that it was annoying like Kelly and Zach. Like Zach, again, a character I really liked in the books. Kelly, I also really liked in the books. She still sort of functions in the same way in the books, but she's a perspective character again, so you kind of get how she feels about everything. But I really felt for Gus in this, and I really felt like this is life that's about to change. And I enjoyed it for what it was, and I liked it for the pacing, and I thought that the dialogue was at least efficient, if not good at points. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the Gus stuff, and I think it made him a sympathetic character, especially considering, like, you know, we kind of got the thug version of him before, and he's still being a thug, but you're kind of seeing why he's a thug. We're just elaborating on it more, and I enjoyed that.
Sure. I think it was on the nose at times. I think him threatening the sort of deadbeat apartment manager for talking about his mother. You're talking to his mother that way. Like, okay. and him him refusing to accept the first offer, the lowball offer for the Mercedes he stole, and then eventually Marlo Stanfield, from The Wire. What if The Wire? Marlo upping the offer, like he's sort of being established as you know the sort of hero, the way that shows establish people as heroes by being right in dialogue, and being paired with people who are wrong, whether it's the apartment manager or his fat brother. I don't know who that was. Family friend?
I think it's his cousin.
Cousin? Okay. Cousin. Yeah. So yeah, that guy, wanting to take the $400 and Gus, like, being the tough guy. Like, it's all stuff we've seen before. It's cliche. It's a little, clunky, as is virtually all the dialogue on this show. But again, in my review, I called it harmless. I think it was harmless material. I think that's and you liked it a lot. I didn't dislike it, and I appreciated the purpose that it served. And I think, as far as the non-vampire material goes, it's about as effective as the strain has gotten. So
that's what I think too.
Yes, and it was good that the non-vampire material was I'll use the word quarantined to this one story that was given plenty of focus. So they committed to it. They told a sort of day in the life of Gus story, and again, it came off. It didn't harm the episode, which is as good as the strain has done so far. So yeah.
Oh man. Well, I think we can agree to disagree a little bit. I mean, I thought it was an excellent sequence. Sure. I recognize that the series does struggle with dialogue. I'm not going to argue that. Obviously, that was Anne Marie took care of that for me.
Yes.
With all of her walking around monologuing. But I thoroughly enjoyed the Gus material, sure. and I look forward to seeing his story unfold.
I do too.
All right, and Gus also had a quick moment where he got to meet Satrakian. He gave him the clock back.
Oh, is that cool. What he's called in the books? I call him Abraham.
He's Abe Satrakian.
Abe. Okay, yeah.
You can call him either one.
He gave him the clock back. Yes.
Yeah. So their paths crossed. I like it. I like it when the stories kind of like they're just like subtly like.
Yes. Oh, you mean like
each other.
The lawyer and the rock star having lunch or dinner at the place where Vasily is, pulling out the rat. Like, little coincidences of this nature.
Yeah, I like that stuff.
Sure.
But speaking of the lawyer, where the heck has she been for the last 2 episodes?
2 episodes now. No word from her.
Jonas, what's up?
What's up? We've seen Rockstar deteriorate. We've seen Ansel now this episode. What happened to him? We've seen the pilot, obviously, with his face smashed in. Lawyer, nowhere to be found.
Nowhere to be found. But we did have Icarus, our favorite vampire.
Only for a little.
Yeah. But he walked in that whimsical way. I think you and I just like Icarus.
We do.
Like, anytime that he walks in, I'm like, hey, Icarus, what's going on?
Dude.
How you doing?
He was, this episode, his only involvement was sitting in on the interview with Hot Blonde, right?
With Dutch Velders.
Dutch Velders,
The lady hacker.
Does she have to be named Dutch Velders?
She did a good job for being a girl.
Oh, gosh.
I couldn't even believe it. I mean, that dialogue, I hate it when shows will stoop that low, but then again, Palmer is like an 80, 90-year-old guy, so of course he's going to think women can't do anything. But then, of course, he's like BFFs with the Secretary of Health and Sanitation or whatever. Oh my
gosh, speaking of dialogue, can you please explain to me why Palmer is talking to the United States Secretary of Health and Human Services as if she is a 9-year-old? He is talking with the cadence and vocabulary that you would talk to a child. Like, he's like, you're so good at your job because you make the tough decisions. And she, like, smiles reassuringly. I'm like, could he be more condescending? Like, he is treating her like she is so stupid. Like, is she not reading between the lines even a little bit? Like, when he thinks of her? Like, it was a military strike, but don't worry. Like, he's telling her a bedtime story. I think, honestly, like, again, the dialogue is the dialogue, but that performance I did not understand. I didn't.
No.
He was. I guess he was told to be reassuring. But boy, it just came off to me as so patronizing, and like it's such an obvious way that if someone was talking to me like that, I cannot imagine not picking up on it. Like, hey, wait, something's up here because he's talking to me like I'm a child.
Right. No, I don't know the name of the actor who plays Palmer, but I will say I haven't enjoyed any of his performances
No,
thus far,
I don't think it's a very good performance.
except for when he knelt at the first
Yes,
episode
true.
and the terror of the master. That was pretty cool. Or the second episode. But no, I don't think any scene with Palmer has been very effective. I think I agree with you. I don't think the dialogue is helping him any.
It's not helping,
But
to be honest.
in terms of like casting people to play off of each other, Eichhorst and Palmer are in two totally different worlds.
Absolutely.
Like, uh, and Palmer, I mean, probably just cast because he's old and he looks like Palmer.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, he's not even phoning it in. I don't know what he's doing.
He's just not doing a good job. I'm sorry, he's just not doing a good job. Like, yeah, if you contrast the scene from a couple episodes back where Eichhorst and Abraham are talking in the prison cell across the glass, the written dialogue for that scene is every bit as ridiculous and pandering and silly, but they are elevating it into like a really awesome exchange. And then in this scene with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, who should not get off scot-free for her acting performance, like that scene is the exact opposite. It's like they are playing down to the dialogue as it is written.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So as many complaints as we have with that entire sequence with Palmer, although let it be noted, he's getting a liver transplant, which I'm sure will have dire consequences in the days to come. But there was a very interesting line by Dutch Velders that she very barely, because you can't understand her. She very barely was able to like get out of her mouth. I don't know. She was literally cast because she was a tall, attractive blonde woman.
Sure.
Like there's no
with a sort of indistinguishable accent. Like I didn't know where she was from.
Yeah. Well, she might have been Dutch.
You know.
Sorry. So you and I talked about like how the show very much feels like it's in 2009, like when the books were published.
Yes.
We've talked about this before. But one of the things that I did enjoy about this episode were, first of all, I mean, there was the whole Jim Kent thing where he was recording the autopsy on his phone.
Yes.
Which, wow, how much space does he have on that thing? Because I don't have that much memory. That's like an hour-long autopsy. I don't know. But
Jim Kent, what is your iPhone plan?
No, tell me. I want it. Is it special CDC equipment?
Ooh.
But then Dutch Velders, they were talking about bringing down the entire internet,
which happened.
Which worked. Because we don't want a photo to be able to be taken and then put online. But then she had a line that I ate it up, and I only got it on the second viewing. I didn't hear it in the first viewing, but in the second viewing, she says it's much harder to hide evil shit nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I just was like, yes!
Yeah.
Thank you. At least we're like talking about the modern era.
Yeah, that's true.
And a real, and you couldn't understand her, so it might as well have been a throwaway line, but it's actually a very important line when you think about it. Like, yeah, things are happening right now. Vampires are starting to take over.
Yeah.
You probably don't want those pictures circulating around the world.
I guess not. A little bit. I feel like we've buried the lead here because we're like almost an hour in, and we haven't talked about the fact that this episode featured the worldwide collapse of the entire communications infrastructure. And it was given roughly 3 minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
That seems like a major event. We could have used some technical details on, considering that, as far as I'm concerned, there are different communications networks. Like it's not like it's not like Watch Dogs, where the entire city of Chicago is run off one computer, and if you hack that one computer, you're good. I don't think that's how the entire worldwide internet and cell phones work. I don't think it's like a one satellite that you got to take down.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the show's commitment to just sort of getting through stuff and yada yadaing the technical details in many cases, but it seems like if you're gonna throw something out like that, you might want to come up with something like come up with an explanation, just one explanation, not
Or
you know.
or reference it outside of that world. Like just have F walking into Emma's house or whatever, little vampire family's house. Have him like being like, "Oh, my GPS isn't working. Good thing we got here before
Oh,
it crapped out," or
they
like
had
something
that.
like that.
You missed
They
it.
did.
They had it.
They
It
did.
was in Gus's story.
Oh.
When Gus wanted to sell the car to Marlowe. I don't know the character's name. I'm just gonna keep calling him Marlowe. Marlowe was like, "It's not a good time. The internet is out," and that's what established it.
Wow, I did not.
So
Even
there was
hear
that little moment. I caught it on the second viewing.
Okay, no, I didn't. I didn't catch that at
Yeah,
all.
they did have the one little moment, but yeah, it seems like if that happened, by the way, in 2014, if the world's internet went out and all cell phones went out, the world would riot. Like we wouldn't have to worry about vampires because we would destroy ourselves. Like that would be like it would just be a monster like giant thing.
Yeah, if my iPhone stopped working, I would climb up onto the roof of my apartment building and try to get service.
Exactly. And I mean, multiply that by the world. Like people would be like, "Wait, why are people's phones in Australia not working? Like what
Right.
that is a different communications grid than here. Why are they all not working? How did
Right.
this all happen in the span of like I'm guessing an hour?
Yeah.
Like how did this happen?"
Well, and it happened right before night fell, right? Because the second night has fallen by this time.
Yes.
Is it the second night or the third night? It's the third night.
I don't know.
It's the third night.
You could
Last week we got the second night with Kelly sitting outside with
Okay.
Zach looking at their reading a book. No, looking at their
get a photo album.
their photo album. And then so when Gus is selling the car and when F enters Emma's home, we've come into the third night.
Okay.
Which is a little unfortunate that we stopped paying attention to time like we did in the first episode, because in the first episode that was like really important.
Yeah. You could have told me that we were in the third week and I wouldn't have batted an eye. I have no concept of time on this show.
No, we're in the third night, which is how quickly this virus is spreading.
I wish that would be made more clear by the show, say by doing a better job of acknowledging that this giant plane crash happened 3 days ago in the show's world, less than 72 hours from now. Like It seems like everyone moved past that.
Yeah, that's a little. I found that to be very disconcerting. Yes. How much people have just decided to stop talking about it. But I guess the military took them all because there was some kind of pathogen that leaves the body very quickly.
Oh gosh!
As Palmer pointed out to the secretary.
Palmer read from a storybook to the Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Okay, we've been disparaging this episode for a little while.
No, we like it.
We like it. I mean, for the last 10 minutes of our podcast, we have been disparaging it. Let's get into the awesome last 10 minutes that we have come to expect from this series.
Yes. Right. It's now a thing. It's now, this show now you can count on ending in a big way every week. So.
Yes, including the beheading of an 8-year-old
child. Make it happen, Abe.
How scary was that? I'm sorry, there is nothing more terrifying to me than small children with children's music, and then they turn around and they look scary. Like, that is a horror movie trope that gets me every time.
Classic horror. Did someone explain why Nora and F, having just fought one of these monsters, entered that house completely unarmed?
I don't
know. Just go in and know. What was their plan, by the way?
And why didn't F say I was here before and I found a bunch of blood?
Nothing, F?
BT dubs might be some scary stuff
Yeah,
happening.
not gonna put two and two together if you were just attacked by one of these vampire monsters. You're going with the stated goal of finding another one, but without wielding any weapons.
I just
By the way, why was Abe there? What a coincidence! Did he follow
no,
them?
no. He got. It's either the beginning of this episode or the end of the last. It was the end of the last episode. He paid another hacker girl,
Another hacker,
a brunette hacker girl,
paid her in video games.
Yeah, with a PlayStation 3,
Yes.
which is clear, or whatever, 4, which is clearly not product placement to get us to buy that system
Definitely.
at all.
I mentioned Watch Dogs earlier.
Good point. But which is a good game. But then he paid her with that to get the list of the addresses and names of all the passengers.
Yes. Okay, there were 204 on that plane. Why is he at this girl's house at the exact time that our two Scooby-Doo friends decide to show up?
Well, the vampires mostly function, I believe, at night.
Sure.
Especially at her. She's more infected, I believe, than Ansel and Bolivar and Lust would be.
You know that? Does Abe know that?
Yeah, dude. They established that Abe is a vampire hunter.
No, I know, but I mean, I'm asking. I understand Abe knows about vampire. I understand that Abe knows everything about vampires. I'm asking why specifically was he at that house out of the 200?
Because it's contrasting.
Because it's a television show.
Yeah, because it's a television show.
I'm not that worried about that.
And it's probably the same reason. One of the reasons that F went over there is because it's kind of close.
Yeah. I'm gonna write in my head that he was following F and Nora. That makes more sense in my head. That Nora had gone up and talked to him. Maybe he knew they were in the area. Maybe he was driving around at night looking for a house, and he saw that he recognized F in the driver's seat, and he's like, "Hey, where are those two headed?" I'm gonna need to write my own material to make this show make a little more sense to me.
Okay, no, and I'm right there with you. There's a lot of stuff that just I'm not a huge fan of. Like, well, it just happened because it happened.
Yes.
That's where we're at right now.
But yes.
But it was really scary.
It was. It was really good.
Top-notch beheading of an 8-year-old material.
If you're looking for a beheading of an 8-year-old, you can't do much better.
Oh God.
And then followed by the beheading of her father for good measure.
Yes.
So much beheading.
Yes. But no, I mean, that whole sequence was excellent, and as the show always does. But you're going to disagree with me on this. So, like, Nora has what I think. I would have that totally. I would have a react. If I saw an 8-year-old child, I don't care what's coming out of its mouth. If I saw an 8-year-old child get beheaded, I would freak out too. That would break me on the inside for a little while. And so Nora, I think, has a perfectly normal human reaction, runs upstairs and freaks out. Oh, we're killing people. Yeah, because you just saw a child get killed, and it's really hard to see children get killed. Children are precious. And then F gives what I thought was the first meaningful bit of dialogue about his career that that worked for me. And I think you're totally going to disagree with me. But he monologues about how we are the CDC, and this is a virus, and this is a virus that we have to destroy because it is changing people's bodies and making them not people anymore. It is changing them. It is taking over them. It is a full parasite, and there's no saving them. And it is our job. This is what we have chosen to do with our careers. And for me, that was super effective. And I think the delivery by Corey Stoll, that delivery for that line, and then his reaction when he pulled the stinger out at the beginning of the episode, and his face was like totally grossed out. Loved it. Like, that was like me going, that is the F that I liked from the books, and that makes me feel something for these characters, and makes me feel something about him and his mission and what he believes he has to do. This is his fate and his destiny to try to save humanity from this terrible virus, and poor Nora just can't handle it.
Yeah.
Sorry. End rant.
No, that was good. That was I would argue better than F's speech. Which I will say, I enjoyed more on the second viewing. On the first viewing, he absolutely lost me because he opened the speech with the bird flu in China, which I was like, really? Like, you're gonna open with comparing humans to birds?
Right.
Because that's right off the bat you're gonna lose me. But on the second viewing I knew it was coming, and so I listened to the rest of the speech and it was actually okay. Um, so I'll give it that. With Nora, um, I don't want to come off on the side of being pro the beheading of 8-year-olds, but um, I think out of context, her reaction makes sense. And this is the same point I made last week about the how the inciting event of the plane crash is really what makes the way everyone's behaving seem so off to me. Because if that plane crash event if they hadn't have gone so big with that event, well, I know it wasn't a plane crash, that plane death, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
If they wouldn't have gone so big with that, if it had just been something small that F just like said like I have a feeling about this, everything would make sense. But they decided to go big with it, and so it doesn't make sense because everyone is behaving as if it's not a big event because they need that to move the story forward. If they wouldn't have had the giant fight with a vampire monster at the end of last week's episode, which Nora was directly involved in and endangered by. She was being attacked by a vampire monster. She sat in on the autopsy of said vampire monster, and she helped burn the body of that vampire monster. She knows what's up as well as anybody on the planet except Abe and everyone in the bad guy team, Icarus and all that. Like,
Right.
she has a full understanding of what understands. If she wasn't in on the autopsy, if she hadn't have been attacked, if she had come in afterwards, this reaction would make sense to me. But for her to have experienced that attack and to have seen firsthand, beyond a shadow of a doubt, what's happening, and to have, gone through all of this with F, for her to suddenly become morally outraged that she saw the lungs, she saw the shriveled heart, like she knows all this. Like, it wasn't like secondhand information. If she hadn't have been involved, I would get it, but she saw all this, and for her to just say, like, to suddenly draw the line, even though apparently it was okay to kill the guy who was attacking them, and by the way, little Emma was attacking them at the time and trying to murder them. Like, there was no ambiguity about that, and they didn't appear to have a plan to subdue her. So they were just dodging her death stinger. It wasn't like she was just sitting there and Abe walked up and beheaded her. And again, I think it's the show overreaching to try to create these moments, and then they double back around and act like those moments didn't happen. Because again, you could have at any point toned down the previous material, and Nora's refusal to sort of accept a situation would make perfect sense. It'd make 100% sense if she wasn't involved in that previous stuff. But she was, because they wanted to increase the drama and have that little moment where F and Nora, where he's like, "Are you okay? Good, because I need you." Like, they wanted to have that moment, so they had to make her involved. And so now they're trying to double back around and make make an argument that to me seems very contrary to that piece of that piece of information that she has. And so that's my case.
I think you're totally right, except I guess, and I don't know how to explain it, but there is something about violence with small children that I think engages your empathy for humanity, or maybe not yours, not to insult you, but but it might be like a dramatic difference between the two of us. It might be like, I don't know, but like I think that even with all of that knowledge, if I were Nora, I would have had the same reaction to seeing a child be beheaded. Like,
the child is trying to kill you. Like,
but it's a child nonetheless.
Okay,
like,
well, yeah.
Once, it's trying to kill you, but there's a hesitation to harm a child when a child tries to harm you.
It's also trying to kill you with a monster appendage that you just learned existed, 3 hours ago in the world of the show? Like, in the time it took to drive over? Like, you just learned about the existence of monsters in the world. And that there is a worldwide epidemic now that is happening that threatens humanity. And you're going to bow out of that because it's just like, can you not, even if you are outraged or like, can you not manage that considering the stakes. Like, there's nothing in Nora's character because she was the one who was curious about Abe. F was the one who blew him off. Nora was the one who was like giving him a chance and curious and listening to him, and she seemed so open-minded and strong. And to me, that's just like it's like it's not a question of her being outraged. It's a question of her being non-functional. Like she can't even function having seen this, and that to me is weakness. Because she's trying to save the
trauma.
Yeah,
that's human trauma. That's something that when humans go through trauma, they can't rationalize the horrible thing that they've seen, and that's maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm digging too deep into what they're doing with Nora's character, but I think she's having a perfectly natural traumatic response to seeing an 8-year-old be beheaded.
But it's an 8-year-old who's covered with blood and whose father subsequently attacked. Like, this is not. It's not an 8-year-old. They did an autopsy. It's a husk. It's literally a husk with internal organs that have been replaced. But like they know this. She knows this firsthand, and she was in mortal danger, both by the pilot attacking and by this 8-year-old and by her father. And it seems so like I understand trauma, but I just don't understand not being able to contextualize trauma. Like being able to say like, oh, that's a monster. That's it's a monster with an intent to kill that is, by the way, threatening the entire world.
Right.
It's just so petty to me. Like your own, like, to not be able to. I mean, I could see her having a moment like in the car or something where she's like breaks down and cries, but like, it's just jeez.
Well, I think we've gotten down to the core of what's horrific about this show, and what's horrific about these creatures is that they do resemble humans, except for one very stark difference that's obvious.
Yes.
Which is that stinger apparatus thing.
Yeah.
And that's what's fundamentally going to continue to be horrifying about this show.
What I think was really stupid about that last scene, is that Emma attacked them. Because she never seemed like. It wasn't like we just saw that at the end of the last episode, so we know how the vampires attack. We're pretty well versed in that now. If Abe had just came up and like Emma was looking threatening and beheaded her, that would make 100% sense to me. I would understand her reaction. Like if Emma had just been sitting there staring at them and growling and looking threatening but not actively attacking, then all of this would make sense, because then she could make a logical case, at least in her mind, I could see that this was non-threatening. Because they clearly treated it like a non-threatening. They went in thinking it would be non-threatening because they weren't armed. So they clearly, for some completely unknown reason, thought this was not going to be a threatening situation. It became one. It didn't have to become one, though. If Emma wouldn't have attacked them, if Abe would have just cut her head off, everything about the scene makes sense. Everything about her reaction makes sense. Everything, and it would have all been made sense. But again, the show is it's trying a little too hard. And I'm actually talking about this episode. I'm actually liking it a little bit less because this stuff is bothering me.
No, I'm actually, with what you've just said, I'm liking it a little bit less as well. Because I think that by trying to force a big moment at the end of every episode, there's a really big missed opportunity to show one of the things that they've been trying to stress, which is that the humanity is confusing.
Yes, right. That would have been. It's so easy to do that. They're just trying. They keep pushing. And it's again another example of where I think the show's logic falls apart, because they want every moment to be the biggest moment, and it just doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And boy.
Wow.
I'm unhappy. I was so happy that this episode didn't include the stupid custody stuff. And then, like, now that we talk about it and actually get into it, it's like, ugh. Everything is kind of that dumb. It's just sort of dressed up with blood and vampires. I'm having a crisis. I'm Nora. Oh, God, I'm Nora.
Well, thank you to our listeners for bearing with us as we dissected that last 10 minutes for much longer than I believe the scene actually took place.
I know. I need a Hannibal-style psychiatry session.
But no, I think we got to some really. I think we came to some really great conclusions.
Yeah.
And I don't think I'm not giving up hope yet.
I'm sorry, fans of The Strain. I went in thinking this was going to be my favorite episode, and I'm somehow more negative about it than I've been about the previous episodes.
Kyle is having a television crisis, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel like I need to rewrite my review.
Oh boy, that's pretty big.
I'm not going to do it. I'm too lazy.
But perhaps something that you can bring up in your next review, which can be read on showratings.tv.
Yeah, just like the PlayStation 4. We're just plugging away.
Just plugging away. Well, I really quickly, I know we've only got a couple minutes. We just hit an hour. But I would like to we got some fan letters.
We did!
It's really
Somehow
exciting.
People are still listening to us complain about this show.
Oh my goodness. Okay, guys. You guys are, fans, you guys are awesome.
Yeah.
There were 3,000 of you that listened to this podcast last month. This is a brand new podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Sincerely, thank you. That's amazing.
Yeah, we are so glad that you enjoy listening to us, and we encourage your feedback. You can email us at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com, and we will read your thoughts before we enter each episode, and maybe we'll mention yours.
By the way, listeners, I have a challenge for you to send, again, thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. Help me like this show. help me, because I want to like it so much. And I mean, if you've been listening to the episodes, you know what my problems are with it. Just help me get past that. I need help.
Yeah, Kyle needs help, everybody.
I need help. Just help me come to terms with what I think are very silly, stupid elements of the show, so that I can just enjoy the vampires. Because I really want to. I want to like this show so much.
Hashtag help Kyle.
Help Kyle.
Hashtag help Kyle.
I'm sending out an SOS.
Okay, so from Adam, we got this is a response to our podcast about episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
The horror aspect of episode 3 really ratcheted up to a point that I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. You didn't quite think that episode 3 was as horrific as this episode, did you?
I think the horror has been pretty consistent across all 4 episodes. I think episode 3 was the first time that I had that the silliness of the show distracted me from the horror, which was the problem that I had with it. And this one has only happened retroactively. Talking about it with you now.
Oh boy. All right. Thank you again, everybody, so much. All 3,000 of you and counting. We really love all of you guys.
Hopefully we don't lose all of you.
Keep coming back. Leave us some feedback. Hashtag help Kyle 2014. Okay. On that note, this wraps up our 5th episode of the Strain Podcast. Before we go, I want to mention a few things. You can download and subscribe to our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. You can also hear all of our shows at our website, southgatemediagroup.com. Please subscribe to this show and also rate us. Follow the show on Twitter at @TheStrainPod and Kyle and I at @BlairLovesTV and @KyleLovesTV. Remember, Blair is spelled with an E at the end. Check out our website, showratings.tv, to rate and review The Strain every week, as well as all of your other favorite shows. Also, feel free to email us at thestrainpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
If you would like to donate to help pay for this and other Southgate Media Group podcasts, simply go to our website, southgatemediagroup.com, and click on the donate button. It can be as little as $1 or, well, as much as you want. Help keep this fun going by supporting this and our other shows. Thanks again for listening, everyone. You're the best fans in the world.